Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to be getting started in a moment. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the webcast, Mastering Performance Management, How Organizations Are Winning with Video-Based Practice and Coaching, sponsored by ELB Learning. Your webcast has been pre-approved for an HRCI credit. Please be sure to attend the complete webcast in order to receive your credit. You will receive an email from hr.com within 2 business days, which will include the certification credit information. You may also log into your hr.com account and view the credits you have received. If you have any questions during the webcast, click on the Q&A in your webinar controls and type them in there. It is now my pleasure to turn it over to our presenter.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that. Hello, everybody. Nice to meet you all. My name is Micah Epler. I am an account executive here with ELB Learning, and I'm just excited to take us all on a journey today discussing our topic, which is, of course, mastering performance management, how organizations are winning with video-based practice and coaching. Before we get started, just a little bit more about myself. First and foremost, that's my family over there. We got to go to the ATD conference in Orlando earlier this year. So of course we had to make our stop by Disney World. So that's them. But I am part of the rehearsal team with ELB Learning. I have been in the video-based practice and coaching space for nearly 3 years now, and I've worked with thousands of clients to provide video-based practice and coaching solutions where employees are being upskilled, certified, trained, reinforced in a multitude of different skill sets and areas and use cases and industries. Some of the organizations I've had the pleasure to work with include 3M and PAYCHEX, Takeda Pharmaceuticals, and AbbVie. And this is a space that I was never focused on getting into. I never had aspirations necessarily of getting into it, but now that I'm here, it's really turned into something that I'm very passionate about because learning has been a part of my life in every single aspect, from my family, right, becoming a father, how to be a husband, how to be a better son, all those different things, to my sports career growing up. Sports was a huge part of my life, and that's part of what I'm going to share with you today. I'm going to tie the sports and the career aspect into both parts of video-based practice and coaching, because as I've grown in my career, I've recognized more and more and more how important and how impactful coaching and practice can be to put yourself in a winning position within your organizations and in our roles. So that's just a little bit about me. So before we get going on this journey, here's just a quick agenda of everything that we are going to cover today. So we're going to talk first and foremost about the power of practice, and this is really broad, right? I don't think that I'm on here to change lives by saying that practice helps people to improve in a particular skill set, right? I think that's undefeated, almost like Father Time in the world. So we're going to be talking more about how do we practice? What are the problems that come with practice in a day and age that we're in now where everybody seems to be stretched really thin? What's some of the behavioral science? What's some of the psychology that goes behind practice and how we practice, and what makes practice impactful? What are the components of practice that are important, that are going to make it as effective and efficient as it should be? From there, we'll then introduce and kind of tie into how video-based practice fits into that. Not only do we practice in real life, but how do we take it into a video format that brings this idea and concept of practice into this new day and age that's really technology driven, and how do we let technology be the driver for that? We'll also talk about how AI and machine learning has helped to simplify that process and help scale that video-based practice and coaching for organizations. Then we'll go ahead and hop into some real-world stories, some case studies, if you will, with some different organizations that have used video-based practice and coaching for a multitude of different use cases in the technology, retail, medical, and insurance industries. And we'll talk briefly about the impactful results that they had. And I'm hoping that by sharing some of these case studies, it derives a lot of questions and gets everybody's mind thinking of different ways that they can use video-based practice and coaching within your own organizations and how that would bring value to your teams. And then finally, if I do my job, obviously I'm a sales guy, so I tend to talk a lot. If I've done what I'm planning on doing today, which is talked for about 45, 50 minutes, that'll leave us about 10 minutes for some Q&A at the end. So with that being said, let's go ahead and hop in and tie in our journey here. So I'm going to start by, I really wanted to make this discussion something that I'm passionate about, that is important to me, and that I can really relate and tell a good story around. So I'm going to talk about my learning through sports, and I'm going to tie it all in to this career growth and this idea of performance management and video-based practice. So I'm from a really small town in extreme Northern California. There's like 3,000 people there. Like, they're stoked to have a Rite Aid, and there's like one blinking light. And in that town, you either played sports or you hunted. So I went the sporting route, and through some good fortune and things like that, I was able to end up playing two different sports for my college, which was Simpson University, which is here in Redding, California, where I currently reside. And I had the opportunity to play basketball and golf for them. And this is really where my first introduction into ramping up this idea around practice and coaching and feedback really started to blossom, and I became hyper aware of it. Of course, practice was something that was part of my lifestyle growing up in sports. It was always there, but I started to realize the impact that it could have just on a day-to-day basis and actually improving through that skill as opposed to just simply developing skill. So back when I was in college, of course, I didn't have any other responsibilities other than go to school, make sure I ate right, got my homework done, that I kept good enough grades, just so I could play sports. That was my main focus. I wanted to play sports there, but during my days there in college, there was a lot of time that was focused and dedicated to this idea of practice. So, I might wake up and go get some breakfast in the caf, go to class, go get some homework done, and then I was in the gym for a one-on-one session, typically with a coach or with a trainer, and I was working on my individual skills. I was working on, my jump shot, making sure my footwork was right, making sure my balance was good, making sure my release was good, or I was working on ball handling or defensive drills, right? A lot of this one-on-one type of coaching where I was in there doing drills, getting some coaching, getting some feedback so I could really develop those individual skills. And then, later after, maybe some more classes and making sure I got my homework done, then I was in the workout gym, making sure that I was preparing my body, that I was lifting, that I was working on mobility, and that I was stretching. I was preparing my body for the competitions that we were going to get into with our games against our opponents, and of course was trying to prepare myself to win. And then even after all of that, there would be team practices that night where we're getting everybody together. We're working on our plays. We're working on our timing. We're working on our team defenses. We're working on our defensive schemes. We're watching film, learning about the other team and what they're good at and where we can exploit them. Again, trying to pinpoint the different places where we could hop in there and actually put ourselves in the best position to win. But all of this time, right, and energy was focused on this skill development, this sharpening, iron sharpening iron type situation of getting better at each of these individual skills, from an individual level to a physical level to the team level. And one thing that took 3 or 4 hours a day that I had to dedicate to making sure that I was getting my practice in, that I was bettering myself as a basketball player. And that, thinking about that from a career standpoint, from an organizational standpoint now, is really daunting, because even just my one-on-one drills, right? Those were about an hour, 30 minutes to an hour long, depending on the day. How do we scale this type of practice, right? The amount of practice that actually takes to get better, to get good at a particular skill set in today's age where people are stretched so thin, right? I mean, we need to be able to boil this down to maybe 10, 20, 30 minutes a day that somebody can put forth whenever their responsibilities, whenever their calendar opens up enough that they have the opportunity to go ahead and practice those different skill sets that they would have in their position today. And so all of this stuff that I was learning, right, was actually driven from a book that one of my coaches gave me, and it was called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. Some of you might know Malcolm Gladwell and his work. Some of you might have read Outliers before. If you have, throw that in the chat, or if you have like a different book of Gladwell's that you really like. I'm very fond of Tipping Point myself, but I'm about to take a road trip in a couple days. So if anybody has any recommendations, I'd love to hear them in the chat. But within this book called Outliers, one of my coaches introduced me to this concept of the 10,000 hours rule that Gladwell talks about in this book. And the 10,000 hours rule says that if you look at any kind of cognitively complex field, from playing chess to being a neurosurgeon, and I would tie being a basketball player, I would tie being a salesperson, I would include anybody in a leadership position who's having to manage people and personalities and those kinds of things. Those all go into that cognitively complex type of field. We see that this incredibly consistent pattern that you cannot be good, and when Malcolm Gladwell talks about good in this context, it's actually right elite level, professional level type of good, right? At that thing, unless you practice for 10,000 hours, which is roughly 10 years, if you think about practicing for 4 hours a day. And so reading that, thinking about it, thinking about organizations again to date, I'm really harping on this idea of how do we scale this, right? That seems so daunting to get to somebody to a professional level. Obviously, they're coming in with some experiences from previous organizations and previous roles and life experiences and things like that. But if we're trying to really drive putting people in a winning position from our organization's culture, from our sales methodology, from our all these different principles and things that we have in place as an organization, right? How are we going to scale this in a way that can be done where people aren't going to get overwhelmed? They're actually going to take the time to do this. So insert this gentleman, actually named Anders Ericsson. Okay, I really liked utilizing this picture of Ericsson here. My father-in-law's desk looks like Ericsson's desk here, but I also imagine that this is what Ericsson's head, like if we were like like get a visual into his brain. This is exactly what his brain looks like, just files of stuff, everything stacked everywhere. But I guarantee if we went and asked him to find us something in that stack, he knows exactly where it is. That's why I like using that picture. Anyways, Ericsson actually did a study on Gladwell's 10,000 hours rule and actually found some not discrepancies, but found some things that maybe Gladwell didn't experience. And so in his research, he wrote this. And it turns out that his study, so Ericsson's study, shows that there's another important variable that Gladwell doesn't focus on in his 10,000 hours rule that's referring to, and that is how good a student's teacher is. Practice is important, and it's surprising how much it takes to master something complicated. But Ericsson's research suggests that someone could practice for thousands of hours and still not be a master performer. They could be outplayed by someone who practiced less, but had a teacher who showed them just what to focus on at a key moment in their practice regimen. As an athlete, when I read this, I really struggled with this concept because I had been putting so many hours into the gym, into bettering my craft as a basketball player. I was mainly a shooter, right? I was kind of a 3-and-D kind of guy, if we've got any basketball fans in here. And this idea that I could be, I'm going to put it in air quotes, that I could be outworking somebody in the gym on my skills, on my game, could ultimately end up being a better basketball player than I was, simply because they had a coach, they had a team of coaches, a staff that was able to better identify and provide better coaching on these different skills that they were working on, really bothered me. I had a hard time wrapping my mind around it, because again, I just being from a small town, it's like you just work harder, right? That's the motto, right? So I really struggled with that. However, from an organizational standpoint, this is really great news, because again, if we can scale the number of hours that somebody has to work on a particular skill set to get good at it, by simply being able to utilize some other people, right? A coach, a trainer, a manager, a mentor, a topical expert, into this process of coaching and feedback, to be able to provide some high quality feedback that would allow us to be able to scale this concept of practice and coaching in a way that we can develop skill in a more efficient manner. And so Erickson actually took this concept of including the coaching and feedback into a practice regimen, and came up with this idea called deliberate practice, which he lays out in his book called Peak. And deliberate practice, again, this is where we're going to start diving into the behavioral science and the psychology behind what makes practice effective. And so in this book, he talks about a fundamental truth about any sort of practice, and that is, if you never push yourself beyond your comfort zone, you will never improve. And I remember this specifically, again, going back to my basketball career. My coaches always made practices really intense. They were very high level. And the reason around that was because they wanted to make our practices more difficult and more intense than the games we were going to play. Because if we could perform at a really, really high level in intense situations in practice, that was going to set us up to be able to still perform at that high level in a game situation. If the games were harder, or if the practices were harder than the games were going to feel easy. And we were going to be, and psychologically, that was going to give us an edge over winning in that situation, regardless of what we came up against, whatever the opponent was. Okay, so there's 5 components to deliberate practice, and this is where we are going to start introducing and tying in the concept of video-based practice and coaching. So again, in Erickson's book, he talks about this other, like, we can choose to get by or we can choose to get better. And he specifically cites these 5 principles of deliberate practice that we can utilize if we're going to choose to get better at something. So first and foremost, over here on the left, we're going to start with pushing beyond your comfort zone. Let's put this in the perspective of typical classic role play. Okay, annual sales meeting, regional meeting, right? Some sort of training meeting where we're getting everybody together. Maybe we learned about a new concept, there's a new product launch or something like that. And now we're going to go out into our breakout rooms. Okay, so I'm in a room, I'm with some peers, and I'm with a manager. And I actually haven't practiced this skill set or anything yet. Maybe I've watched somebody do the role play with the manager first, and I'm supposed to learn from that. But in that situation, I don't know about you, but maybe this is just me, but in those situations, which I've been in before, I am doing my best simply to not screw up in front of my peers. I don't want to make mistakes. I don't want to look like an idiot. I don't want to look like I don't know how to do my job, right? We're kind of jockeying for position, and I'm just in there, and I'm just doing the bare minimum that I can do to get through this role play, so that I don't look dumb. So I'm just, tipped on the line, not really saying anything very, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm blanking on it. Doesn't matter. Try not to screw up. Okay. And quite honestly, I'm probably just like sweating through my shirt a little too much. So that's not where growth is, right? We're not pushing the boundaries. We're not getting any better by just tiptoeing the line and trying not to screw up. So within video-based practice and coaching, when we give somebody a scenario, right? Something to practice. We give them a video role play, and they have to now be on camera. They have to see themselves. They have to hear themselves. That's going to push them outside of their comfort zone to where they're just trying to get through the process, to where now they also have to review how they did. They have to see how they're performing. They have to hear their messaging. And that's really pushing them to be in a position where they have to be sharp. They want to be better, right? They want to do the best that they could be. They want to be the best versions of themselves. Well, not only that within video-based practice and coaching, but we want learners to feel comfortable in that position. We want them to feel like they can go ahead and make mistakes, because that's where the growth and the learning is, right? If they only practice what they know, right, which is maybe this far, we want to get into that gray area, which is out here, which is where the next development of that skill development is, right? We want to live in that gray area. So we want people to feel like they can get on camera and practice these skill sets, these different talk tracks and things, to where they actually push themselves outside of their comfort zones and make mistakes without repercussions, because a learner can discard that recording and now nobody ever sees it. Okay, they don't have to see it again. A manager doesn't see it, right? That video goes away, and now they can practice again and again, push themselves into that gray area, into that unknown, into that skill development area, to where now they're actually growing that ability. And then once they nail it, then they can submit it, maybe for some review and for some coaching. Okay? So push yourself beyond your comfort zone is part one of this concept of deliberate practice. The second one is specify goals. So let's utilize a couple different use cases here. Let's say it is a sales-based use case, and it's around an elevator pitch. Okay, we want to make sure that we define really clearly what we're looking to get from that learner out of that situation. What are we trying to get out of practice? Are we looking for their messaging to be exact, word for word? Are we looking for confidence? Are we looking for just people to say the right buzzwords that go along with that elevator pitch? Do we want to make sure that we hit the value prop? Are we making sure we make good eye contact, right? All those kinds of things. Or maybe it's a leadership development type of use case where, again, what are we looking? Let's say it's they're having a difficult conversation with an employee. All right. Okay, what are we looking to get out of that? Are we trying to diffuse the situation? Are we trying to use some sort of methodology in how we handle this to get to a solution? Or what do we need to very clearly define for these end users what the expectations are and what we're looking to get out of this practice. What is our goal? Because when learners are able to know exactly what the expectations are, they can get really detail oriented around those different those goals, right? What we're trying to reach, and they can really focus on those, which is going to only sharpen and enhance the quality of the practice itself. So specify goals. That's principle number 2. Principle number 3 is focus intently on practice activities. So story time. I'm going to raise my hand here. I don't know about some of you. Traditional training, traditional stuff, right? I'm going to read a course. I'm going to read an article, and then I've got to watch a video. It's maybe going to summarize it or expand on it. And then at the end, I'm going to take a multiple choice quiz, right? To prove that I learned something. Well, I just happen to be a good student. So I skim the article. I don't really read it. And then I go and I click on that video. And while that video is playing, I actually go into my email and I start looking at emails, and, I'm sending out emails because I've got metrics to hit and things like that. I'm not really watching that video though. And then once that video is done, because I happen to be a halfway decent test taker, I get in that multiple choice quiz and I, get by with 80%. That's great. At no point in time during that kind of training am I focused intently on anything that's in front of me, right? So with video-based practice and coaching, again, this person is going to see themselves. They are going to hear themselves. It's very hard to deliver solid messaging around a product pitch, around how to de-escalate a situation if I'm having a difficult conversation, if I am watching, if I've got the TV on, if I've got headphones in and I'm listening to a podcast, if I'm typing emails, none of that's going to come across. We can see how distracted we are. We can hear how distracted, because the messaging is going to be jumbled. So with video-based practice and coaching, they're going to have to focus intently because they have to make good eye contact. They're going to see themselves. Their messaging has to be clear. And so even though it might be for a short time, maybe it's only a 30-second video that they're taking, for those 30 seconds, they are totally dialed in into exactly what it is that they are doing. And again, this is pushing them, this actually ties back into pushing themselves beyond their comfort zone, because whatever video that they do end up submitting is going to be reviewed by somebody on the back end of this. So again, they were going to want to put together a good performance. They're going to be focused intently on what it is that they're doing in that practice activity. So that's principle number 3. Number 4 is high quality feedback is critical to success. All right, so we talked about this already, right? With Erickson's review of Gladwell's 10,000 hours rule. And again, thinking about it from tying it back into my basketball thing. If you know you've got somebody who can help you focus on the details, sometimes it just we've all been in situations where we can't see the forest through the trees. And then somebody walks up and you tell them what's going on, and all of a sudden it clicks, like, oh, that was the obvious answer, right? That's the type of high quality feedback that we're looking for. So mentors, coaches, managers, trainers, they get the opportunity to go ahead and watch these videos that these learners are submitting into the platform. And they can really, again, since it's video based, and they can pause and rewind and rewatch and do these kind of things, they can focus. And sorry, before I get ahead of myself, and that we know exactly what the specific goals are because we've clearly defined them, they can get very detail oriented on the type of feedback that they are providing, because it's really clear to everybody what our goals are and what we're looking to achieve. So they can focus as well into what this performance and what the different skill sets that these learners are practicing, so that they can provide high quality coaching and feedback. We have seen video-based practice and coaching break down if somebody takes the time, if a learner takes the time to really put forth a good effort, and then a mentor comes in and they say good job and they slap a thumbs up emoji on it and they pass it, right? If that's the kind of feedback and coaching that a learner will get on a particular video, that is ultimately, as time goes, the type of effort that you'll get from those learners in the first place before the mentor gets it to. So this feedback is critical to success, to keep learners engaged, but to also continue to drive the skill building that we're looking to get by actually doing the activity in the first place. And then lastly, mental models can become reality. So again, I'm going to share a story time here. So my first, I'm going to again use air quotes, my first big boy job, I worked for Staples. I was doing B2B sales down in Southern California. I was in the Valley, and I had never done any sort of sales job before, and I was supposed to be cold calling, right? I was given a huge leads list, and I had a task to write out my introduction. Hi, this is Micah from Staples, and give my introduction if I was to call somebody. Okay, well, I did that, wrote it out, and then they were like, all right, it's time to get on the phone. And I got on the phone and somebody answered, and I gave my pitch, and they said, okay. And I had no idea where to go. I didn't know what to do. I completely went blank. I didn't have any mental model to call back on because I'd never done it before. And so I literally went blank. My manager jumps in because she's in the room with me, jumps over the top, tries to, save the call because I'm sitting there not saying anything at all. By now, the person who answered the phone knows that it's a sales call and it's a cold call, and just hangs up and completely lost that situation. But since I had no experience, no foundation around what this cold call, how it was supposed to go, I couldn't even have a conversation with this person. I had no idea what to do. And so through these different principles, we're ultimately building these mental models of this experience, of this foundation of capability around this skill set, around the talk track, around whatever it is that I've practiced that now once we're in a real life situation, whether it's a revenue driving situation from a sales standpoint, or whether it's an opportunity to build rapport and relationship build in a leadership training situation, I have this model that I can call back on because I've already done this thing before. Right. So even it might not be smooth the first time. Of course, it's not going to be smooth the first time, but I can at least rely on the foundation that I've built through this practice, that I can actually get through it and learn from it and get better the next time I have it. Okay. So creating these mental models is ultimately the goal that we're trying to get to, because again, I think about it from a use case standpoint, right? Let's say pharma, right? A pharma rep. I don't want my rep who's taken all this time, all this work to actually get in front of a doctor. That is not the time I want that rep to practice their pitch and their skill set, is when they're actually in front of the doctor and it's potentially revenue driving, right? We want to have practice and practice and practice to where when they get there, they're put in a position to win, and they're going to be confident because they've got experiential knowledge and this mental model to call back on, that they can go ahead and deliver and actually have a conversation with this doctor and be able to overcome objections and do all the things that this doctor might throw at it, any direction the conversation wants to go. Okay. So this slide is the secrets. If there's nothing else that you take from today's presentation, right, please take these 5 principles of deliberate practice. This is the secret sauce around why practice is important, why it's impactful, the behavioral science that's actually going to the kind of practice that is going to make these learners, these people who are going through these practice activities, better. So again, push yourself beyond your comfort zone, specify goals that are well-defined, focus intently on practice activities, provide high quality feedback from coaching, and then create a mental model that you can call back on in a real life situation. So just in case we need a sort of visual around this, right? So again, if we practice just for the sake of practice, right, we're just developing skill. But if we utilize deliberate practice, which includes that coaching and that feedback, we're actually going to be able to improve skill. So we would prepare to practice whatever activity it is, then we're going to take action, right? Then we're going to get some feedback. And through that process, that's going to make us a little bit better, because now we can prepare. We've already got some foundation through the feedback. We're gaining some knowledge. Now we can prepare again, take a little bit more action, get some feedback, right? And as you can see, we're going to create this line of steady improvement with deliberate practice, as opposed to keeping a flat line. If we're just, sort of developing that skill, we're just trying to understand that skill. The coaching and feedback aspect of this is highly important for actually developing and improving that skill. This slide might actually seem out of place, but I actually wanted to pull this because if I go to Google, right, and I type in practice and I go to the images, right, this is the kind of stuff I get. This is like all of these are similar. Like everybody's seen those motivational posters. My father-in-law has one up in his chiropractic office. It's like a bald eagle, right, flying over a lake. It just says motivation underneath it, and you're like, okay, that's cool. All of these quotes about practice, even from the best of the best within football, right? Vince Lombardi and Will Chamberlain in basketball. All of these quotes about practice, while true, only provide one side, one piece of the construct of practice, right? Practice does not make perfect. Only perfect practice makes perfect. Well, how do you perfectly practice? You need the framework of deliberate practice behind it, which happens to include coaching and feedback. Right? So all of these, none of these quotes tie in that aspect of coaching and feedback, and are really missing the mark, right? This is a 2-dimensional look at coaching and feedback, as opposed to at practice, as opposed to a 3-dimensional if you include the coaching and feedback. So again, I just wanted to share this because I do think there's a fundamental miscommunication around what practice is, because it includes coaching and feedback. So people think they can take it on all themselves, and that's not how it works. You got to get some other people involved who actually, who know, right, that we can learn from. So again, I want to tie this, these next 3 slides. Again, I'm just going to kind of beat this into the ground a little bit, because I'm going to talk about this idea of active practice, right? This video-based practice would fall under the active practice umbrella, versus passive learning, which is, again, what I've experienced for the most part in my classic HR L&D type of training that I've been a part of, onboarding training when I come onto a new role, right? So we're going to talk about the differences between these two. So passive learning, right? Let's use the use case of riding a bike. I could go online, I could go onto YouTube, I could watch a video on how to ride a bike. I could learn where I should put my feet. I can learn where I should put my hands. I can watch somebody on a half pipe. If I'm watching the X Games, I could watch somebody riding a mountain bike down a mountain on a blue diamond level course or something like that. I could go read a book about it. Maybe the book gets into more of the science behind it. Maybe they introduce gravity and what it takes to stay on the bike so you don't fall over and the gravity doesn't pull you down, or I learn different things about it. I could take a quiz, right? I could take what I've learned in the video and in the book and take a quiz and actually show that I know that I've learned something, right? So this is knowledge attainment. I could go talk to somebody. I could go talk to the best bike rider in the world. I could go talk to, shout out, Lance Armstrong or something like that, right? Why don't you tell me about riding a bike? How did you learn to ride a bike? What were your experiences riding a bike? What about the first time you fell off riding your bike, How did that feel, right? I could gain all this knowledge through all of these different things, but I can't actually do anything. Like I've got the knowledge, but now we got to put it into something. And so that's where the active practice comes in, because ultimately at some point in time, if I want to prove to somebody else or to myself or whatever that I can ride the bike, I've got to get on the bike and I have to ride it. I've got to take all the knowledge that I'm getting through my training, right, through my learning, through my knowledge attainment, and actually put it into practice. At some point in time, I'm going to have to push myself outside of my comfort zone. If I want to learn how to ride the bike down the mountain, I'm going to have to get on the mountain for the first time and ride the bike and push myself into that gray area, into that place where I'm going to actually grow skill and develop skill. It's not going to be through a book, right? I mean, this is important. I got to learn the different things, but then I've got to actually put it into some sort of practice in order to actually grow that skill set. And that goes for a hard skill like riding a bike or a soft skill. Okay. And we'll wrap that up. I'll get off my soapbox on that one. So that was the first section, all about the power of practice. How do we practice? The behavioral science behind the practice. Let's actually put something into practice now. And we've brought in this concept of video-based practice, but now let's dive a little bit further into that and how the AI and the machine learning help to simplify that process. So within video-based practice and coaching, you have the ability to create scenarios. Okay, so these are going to, again, be the difference. And this could be a video role play if we want to go about that way, or it can simply be the video-based instructions. Okay, but we create a scenario like, hey, let's practice overcoming this objection, or again, let's talk about how we're going to own the room if we're going through a leadership development, or if it's a new hire type of situation, hey, let's just practice providing our value prop, right? What is our value prop? How are you going to communicate that? So you can create a scenario, from your L&D group or from the sales group or something like that. You can create it in the platform and then send it out to your group of end users who would then receive it, right? And they're going to get notified when this happens. From there, they can review this information, right? They can review the prompt video. They can review some text-based instructions. They're going to review the grading criteria because we want to define those goals, right? Those need to be very clearly and well-defined. We might provide some supplemental information as well, maybe like a tips and tricks doc or a case study or a best practice video or a training video, right? Those things that we're talking about knowledge attainment, we might want to include that information so that the learner can review that stuff, gain that knowledge and have that so that they can then put some of that into this experiential practice that we're looking to do. So from there, a learner can grab whatever device they want to, right? You can do this. There's platforms out there, including our own, that you can do this on a desktop, you can do it on a laptop, you can do it on a tablet, you can do it on a mobile device. If your teams are out and they're remote, or maybe they're out in the field, right? They can do this in their car or in their hotel. They can review the information and then practice as many times as they want. They can practice and practice and practice. And if they take a video and they don't like it, they can discard it and practice again. Or ultimately, what they can do is once they get to a level of performance that they feel comfortable with submitting, they can now submit that video, and now it's going to get routed to whoever's been assigned to them, right, as their mentor. So this can be this again can be a coach, it can be a manager, it can be a topical expert, somebody from L&D, anything like that. And now that person gets to go in and provide that high quality feedback that we're talking about. So they can watch that video over and over. Since the goals are really clearly defined, they can be very detail oriented into the type of feedback they're providing, what we're looking to drive out of this in terms of skill development, right? So it takes a unified front from whoever's pushing out the content to the learner, to the mentor in terms of providing the right type of feedback. And then also through AI and machine learning, we now have the ability to provide sentiment analysis type of reporting. So, learners can get feedback on how this technology lives out there. They have the ability to get feedback on how they do with things like eye contact, with their facial expressions, with articulation and logic and pace and tone, right? You could track articulation and pace and tone and their facial expressions throughout the entirety of that video. So we can see at different points, right? If somebody's got a negative facial expression, okay, well, where's that at in the video? What are you talking about when that facial expression comes up? Were you overcoming objection and you're not feeling confident about our ability to overcome that, right? So we can start to teach and coach to those types of things and provide feedback on that. There can be audio transcription capabilities where we can actually pull, what learners say word for word and highlight keywords or filler words so that we can look to clean up our messaging, get rid of the ums, the likes, the you knows. I'm a just guy personally. I say just a lot. It's in my emails all the time. I need to practice that. And then you can see as well through this technology that lives out there, you can see how you do against the average of your peers on these different sentiment analysis points. So, are you above average or below average when it comes to your tone against the people, the average of your peers who also did this exact same scenario? What about how'd you do on storytelling? How'd you do on pacing? All these different kinds of things. So that capability in itself allows us to scale this information because we're gathering these data points, and it doesn't fall on the mentor to do that as well, and the learner doesn't have to self-identify and pick up on those things. We can provide these data points that are going to help us scale and make the practice more impactful and more effective. And then also from the mentor side as well, they can provide that high coaching quality and feedback, high level, high quality coaching and feedback. That's what we're trying to say on that. And so as a mentor goes in to review and provide that coaching and feedback, they can prompt the learner for a new response. Maybe the learner just wasn't quite up to the level that we're looking to. So we can provide that coaching and feedback, prompt them to try again so that they can go in, take the feedback, watch the feedback, hear the feedback, impart that into what they've already practiced and get a little bit better. And we can continue to go back and forth in that manner until you get to a level of sufficiency that you're comfortable with. Or you can certainly provide a final grade type of situation as well, in which case you grade out on that rubric or on those criteria that we have clearly defined that's going to help drive our goals. And then you can also, in this regard, utilize if somebody just comes in and nails it, right? Maybe they're one of your top performers, or they're just a really great communicator and they just nail whatever this is that they've practiced. You can share that on, maybe a leaderboard type of situation where we say, hey, this is what it looks like. Here's why this video is good. Here's what we want people to learn from it. And then we can utilize some of these best practice, some of these people who are just killing it, they're hitting their sales numbers every month, those kinds of things. Let's show what they're doing so that we can hopefully, if we're looking at it from a bell curve standpoint, right? These people are up here. How do we upscale the bottom of our bell curve using user-generated content? This is what video-based practice and coaching is the perfect vehicle to allow you to do that. Please, if there's any questions on that, I know that was a lot. I really tried to walk through almost this idea and this concept of the kind of workflow that you can have with video-based practice and coaching. Please put that in the chat, and we can get to it here at the end of the session. Okay, so now that we've covered those top three things, the power of practice, what is video-based practice, how does AI and machine learning, how can those be used? Let's hop into a couple of case studies. So first and foremost, here's one that Verizon did, right? So they utilized video-based practice and coaching. This was a sales-focused situation. So they utilized 3 training groups, okay, and each one had different levels of training that was included on it. Okay, group 1 here included 423 employees, and they received absolutely no training. And what this resulted in was simply $871 of new revenue per sales employee. I do forget off the top of my head how long this type of test was run for. I don't remember the length of the time. I'll have to get back to if anybody wants that information, let me know. The second group was 440 people, and those employees received training but did not include video-based practice and coaching. And just simply by adding training into their development and their process, that led to $3,802 in new revenue per sales employee. Well, this last group included 515 employees, and they received training and video-based practice and coaching. And wouldn't you know it, just by simply including that, the revenue jumped to $6,494 of new revenue per sales employee, simply by adding video-based practicing and coaching into that. And so that led to a 71% increase in orders and $1.39 million in additional revenue. Pretty good results. Let's look at another case study. So this one is with our great customer, or a great customer of ours, PAYCHEX. PAYCHEX utilizes video-based practice and coaching for a new hire for new hire training. So what they wanted to do is they wanted to take a 16-week, mostly in-person onboarding process down to a 10-week, mostly virtual onboarding process, and they wanted to include video-based practice and coaching into it. Now, their goal was actually to increase employee retention. So in the financial industry, a lot of turnover in that, so they wanted to increase employee retention. And wouldn't you know it, by including video-based practice and coaching, ultimately what happened is that people felt like they were put in a better position to win in the roles that they were in. And because of that, it actually led them to staying longer. So because they got to success sooner, right? They had that practice, they had those mental models to call back on. So now that they got into the role, which was potentially revenue driving, or whatever the goal of their role was, they could win sooner. So that actually led to an 8% increase in retention, a 10% increase in business revenue, 41% increase in speed to competency, which is really important, right? If we're talking about new hire employee, a new hire or employee onboarding type of training, how quickly can we get them up to a level where they can win? Through this case study, it was 41% faster results in getting them to a level of competency where they could go out and perform at a high level in their role. And then obviously, as I mentioned, right, a 16-week mostly in person down to a 10-week mostly virtual, right? That led to a 68% reduction in travel costs as well. Last one here, we'll talk about a retail pilot that somebody did utilizing video-based practice and coaching. And ultimately, their goal with this was simply to get employees within this retail store to feel more confident, to feel more comfortable with going up to customers and asking if they needed help. Hey, just engaging them. What can I help you with today? Right? Because if we engage people, right, we're going to create a better experience, going to get people coming back. Also, if they have a question and we can actually answer it, we're far more likely to increase sales. And so by adding video-based practice and coaching into some of their training for these retail workers to help them grow their skills around conversing with people, as well as knowledge about the store, where products are located, maybe some of the more highly purchased items, if we've got some FAQs about those that we can fall back on, we have to have that skill set. So this ultimately, again, just was through a 1-week pilot. So this is, imagine these kinds of results in just 1 week. A 17% increase in conversational confidence This was done through survey, right? And a 5% increase in post-training assessment score as well. So again, so we're actually utilizing, this one was done in a different way where the video-based practice coaching was part of the initial training and actually led to a greater understanding of knowledge and assessment on the back end of it. So we didn't assess first and then practice afterwards. We included the practice and then assessed after that. It led to a 5% increase. Okay. So that's going to go ahead and conclude my talking portion today. I think I've talked to you all enough. I would love to go ahead and hand it on out to everybody, and let's get some Q&A going. What questions can I help answer? Are there any questions on anything that we covered today? And let's open up the discussion. Please feel free to utilize the chat or the Q&A as well if we want to input any of those. If anybody has anything at all, be happy to help. So Sepida in the chat, thank you for your question. So she was asked, who creates the content for video practicing? This is a good question, and we see it done a multitude of ways. So some organizations will do it in-house. Maybe their L&D group will do it, or if they've got a training group, they'll create some of those. We see some organizations, oh, you're one person HR. That makes sense. We do see the content is really easy to build in rehearsal, so it kind of depends on the use case. How often are you looking to push out content? Is there a particular course that the content is tied to? Because that could really clearly define the different kinds of scenarios that you could push out. We see organizations push it out to managers to utilize in like an a la carte situation with their teams. You can also utilize ELB does have services. You can see here on the wheel on the right hand side, we do have the ability to create custom content for you as well. So we see all of those different things utilized. So another question that came through the Q&A, right? What can AI detect when learners practice communication skills, independently with video-based practice and coaching? So I mentioned a few of them off the top when I was talking about it, but the AI components can search for tone, can search for logic, can search for pacing, facial expression, articulation. It will also do audio transcription, and again, search for those filler words or keywords. Those are fully, the filler words are a static exhaustive list. However, the keywords, those are, that's dynamic. That's fully customizable to you and your organization. Again, if you're doing like product type training or something like that, you might have buzzwords that you want to make sure that they say, or want to make sure that they're asking, they're putting certain words within their questions and things like that. You can utilize that as well. Anybody else out there? Let's see, we got one last one that came in. So this is how does video-based practice and coaching typically work with LMSs or other systems, and what data can be tracked? So this is a good question. So within video-based practice and coaching, you can take these different scenarios that you would build within a particular platform, and you would then link them or deep link them wherever at in the learning journey within the LMS. So again, right, maybe you read a course and you watch a video, and then here comes a video-based practice and coaching activity. You can utilize single sign-on to tie people into a platform, so they don't have to log in again, but they could go in, do the activity, and then close it out and be back into the LMS or whatever system. It might be a CRM, for instance, like Salesforce or something like that. and be right back into that system. You can utilize an API to track any sort of data that is being captured by the platform. So that could be activity data, scoring data, individual grading criteria data. It could be, was it pushed to the leaderboard? Those types of things, it can all be tracked, and you can call that data out of a video-based practice and coaching platform into an LMS, into a CRM, so all that data lives in one place. Or you can pull it into a BI tool and to create visuals and things like that as well. So again, one last question, right? Video-based practice, is it live or recorded or both? In all of my experiences, the video-based practice and coaching is done asynchronously, simply so you don't have to coordinate schedules again, right? It's just a way to make things scalable. Again, if we're talking about if you've got team, well, again, Seth, but I know you mentioned that you're just one in HR and you've got 50 employees type situation. So, maybe teams aren't spread out across time zones or things like that, but definitely being able to do video-based practice and coaching when it makes sense for people given their other responsibilities, throughout their day. If I can, maybe I'm a rep and I've got meetings in the morning, but then I've got an hour break in between, I could hop in and do that then, as opposed to having to make sure I coordinate with somebody to be able to do it live. So it's typically recorded. There is a workaround to do it for both, but we'll stick with it's typically recorded and done asynchronously. Okay. That's everything that I see in the chat. Thank you for those questions. Megan, I will go ahead and pass it on over to you. Thank you, everybody, for the opportunity to be a part of this session today. Thanks for listening, and appreciate everybody's time. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This concludes our webcast today. I'd like to thank our presenter as well as all of you for joining us. If you joined late and would like to view this webcast again, the recording and slides will be available on hr.com in our archived webcasts. Your HRCI credit will show up in your hr.com account within 2 business days. We will also send out an email with the credit information. Please take a few moments to fill out the webcast survey that will open on your screen. Your feedback is very important to us. This concludes our webcast. Enjoy the rest of the sessions and the rest of your day.